Hello and welcome to the DutchCrafters showroom for our live video with Eugene Stutzman. Eugene is the subject of the documentary short film Eugene Alexander, The Fashion of Eugene Stutzman, which was produced by DutchCrafters and selected for 2 film festivals. It recently debuted online. If you haven't seen it yet, you can check out the film at dutchcrafters.com/video. We also have with us the producer, Deborah Gingrich, and the director and editor, Jake Smucker. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions and comments, and we'll do our best to answer them live on air. Let's get things started. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Will each of you start by telling us a little bit about your part in this film? And we'll start with Deborah.
Hello, I am Deborah Gingrich, and I am the Director of Marketing at DutchCrafters, and I was the producer for this film, so that mainly meant that I got to give input as Jake was filming and editing, and just tried to make it as easy on him as possible to create it.
I'm Jake Smucker, and I directed, shot, and edited the film, and coordinated interviews with Eugene, conducted some of the interviews, and took Deborah's expert advice on what we should do for the direction of the film.
I'm Eugene Stutzman, and was I the star of the film?
Star.
Subject of the film, which I really enjoyed working with Deborah and Jake, and I hope you have questions for me.
We will. We'll start right away with a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Eugene, can you tell us what was the first moment that you really felt you made it and belonged in the New York City fashion world?
Well, it was winter time. We had shipped our first batch of clothes to New York, to Saks Fifth Avenue. And Alex and I were sitting, Rockefeller Center is right across from Saks, and then there's the ice skating rink. So we were sitting on a bench there in front of Saks, we had the windows on Fifth Avenue, and we were looking at our clothes. We were 30 years old, and it was just so incredible. Because being in Saks meant you had clout. That our salesman could say, well, Saks has taken this. So then everyone would assume that, yeah, you had a factory, you could produce this. So it was really great. And that's when I first felt like, yeah, we have made it to New York.
Exciting. How does it feel to see a dress you designed in a movie? What movies have you seen your creations in?
And a lot of TV. We actually did more TV than we did movies. The film studios and the TV networks have in New York City buyers whose job it is to go out to all the showrooms, look at garments that they might need for special occasions. And so we had our first big movie was No Way Out with Sean Young. So they ordered 2 or maybe 3 dresses because there's a scene of Sean Young and Kevin Costner in the back seat of a cab, and all of a sudden the shot is of the cab going and the dress flying out the window. So they needed a very recognizable dress, which this was, with the big flower. And they had to have a couple of extra for retakes. But if you see the movie, it was one of the interesting shots there, is when the dress comes flying out. And then Down and Out in Beverly Hills, which was a comedy with Bette Midler, and that was a lot of fun to work on that. And Broadcast News. A lot of movies I just can't remember them all. If Alex were here, he could tell you, because he was very much into them. Dolly Parton, Mary Hart, Elizabeth Taylor,
No, Deborah, you've known Eugene for a while. Did you learn anything new about him through this process working on the film?
A lot of the stories that Eugene told are ones that I have heard off and on through the years of knowing Eugene. I think the one thing was actually seeing the dresses up close. I hadn't really had that opportunity before, and actually seeing how they're made on the inside and the outside. And that is probably what inspired me to have recently purchased a Eugene Alexander dress myself, because I knew that when I got it that it was going to look as good as new, and it does. So that was probably, I knew they were beautiful dresses, but I think it surprised me to see even how well made that they were all these years later.
Well, if I may just add to that, the customer that originally wore that dress was not like you. This was not, this was a pampered older woman, and the inside of the dress had to be constructed. As you know, it has boning, and a super heavy duty zipper, and all of these things. Our customer back then, they didn't kayak, they weren't going to the gym, you know. It was a softer customer. Does that make sense? So it was so great when I saw Deborah in this dress with this great svelte body that she has. And it's great to see that this dress that was originally made for this totally different customer is still working, and it looks great.
If you're just joining us, we're chatting live with the producer, director, and subject of the documentary short film, Eugene Alexander, The Fashion of Eugene Stutzman. You can view this documentary at DutchCrafters.com/video. We're glad you're here. Please send us your questions, and we'll do our best to get to them as soon as we can. Let's see, Eugene, can you tell us what was your creative process like? How did you and Alex come up with your dress designs?
You have to have your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in the culture. Like I said before, you have to understand your customer and what the functions are that they're going to be wearing this dress to, especially on special occasion, which is where we were. So it was very important to that customer to have something outstanding and if you will, drop dead looking, you know. And back then in the stores like Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, the salespeople would be very careful. They would actually have little note cards, what the occasion was, you know, the mistletoe ball or something like that. And they would list so that they wouldn't duplicate. And they would list which customer had which dress. And when the dresses would come in, they would actually pull aside, like, this is for Mrs. Getty, or this is for Mrs. Yoder. Probably not. But now, I go to Macy's in the better dress department, and it's, you know, it's kind of a minimum wage person that isn't so invested in the customer, like back in the old days. What was your question?
Talking a little about your creative process and how you
the creative process. And then the other thing is, a lot of times fashion is what looks new and what looks old. So it's almost reactionary in that way, like, oh, that body looks old, meaning the silhouette of the dress. So you always looking to try to see things maybe historically, looking at old Vogue magazines from the 50s, or we would go to the Metropolitan Museum. They have a great collection of dresses there, and you would get inspired to seeing something that looked really new again. And color, we all know when we're tired of a color, or you see even men do it. It's funny to watch the anchor men and their little ties and their shirts, which is the only expression men can do in color, you know. But you'll see trends. Oh, Chris Matthews is wearing a blue checked shirt, and then all of a sudden this trend will like catch on, and you see it. This was extremely popular, cornflower blue, and still is with anchor men. So you watch those kind of trends. Cornflower blue is a big color. So you go to the fabric people, and lo and behold, there's cornflower blue silk taffeta. And the very creative people that design the fabrics that we use, that design the prints, you go in and you see, oh wow, this is on target. It looks new. You know, so you go with that.
Speaking to Jake in his nice cornflower blue, what were some of the challenges, some of the big challenges you faced when you were making this film?
Challenges. Well, here at DutchCrafters, in some ways they made it easy for me to have the time and the time and the equipment I needed to produce the film. But in other ways, it was a very simple film shoot. It was basically zero budget. We filmed here in the showroom. We filmed upstairs in our building. Filmed at Eugene's organ shop. And if you watch the film, you'll see why he now has an organ shop. But it was mostly just me filming, and sometimes also setting up lights, directing, asking the questions, running the interviews. In some ways that was a challenge, but I also think that helped to make the film what it ended up being, was that we had a singular vision for the film, and we were able to work together to make that kind of come together. So I would say that was one of the biggest challenges, but it was also exciting. It made it fun.
Eugene, we have a question for you. How do you think your Mennonite upbringing around the Amish influenced your career in fashion?
Well, on maybe kind of a superficial level, I believe that the simplicity of and the beautifully made clothing and quilts that I grew up with their color blocking and lots of cornflower blue, gave me an appreciation of pure color and good design and good craftsmanship. Also growing up Mennonite as a pacifist and as a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War, which Alex and I both were, we had a great social justice sense with regard to the labor conditions in the garment world, which everyone knows, and thankfully it's getting a lot better now. But in the 80s, it was still pretty much sweatshops that made most of our competitors close. So my Mennonite upbringing, with its tremendous value placed on human rights and social justice and nonviolence, was a lot of times Alex and I both were just abhorred at what was happening in the industry. And we spoke out about it, and our labels proudly said "Made in USA," which we could do because we paid a fair wage and all of our clothes were made right here in Sarasota, actually. So I would say that's the main influence of my Mennonite upbringing.
Very admirable one. If you're just joining us, we are chatting live with the producer, director, and subject of the documentary short film Eugene Alexander, The Fashion of Eugene Stutzman, which was produced by DutchCrafters. You can catch this film at DutchCrafters.com/video, and be sure to leave us your comments and questions for our panel. Let's see. Deborah. Have you ever produced a film before, and what was this?
I have not produced a film before. I have worked on supporting a lot of videos and commercials and such, but not a documentary like this. And when we started, I don't think we knew the path that this was going to take. I mean, we started by being a business sponsor for a fashion show and art exhibit that was being shown of Eugene Alexander dresses, and started thinking about really promotional videos to support that. And at some point, I'm not sure when or how, but at some point either Jake looked at me or I looked at him and said, there's a documentary in this. So that's really how it came about. Fortunately, Jake is a great storyteller, so even before we were thinking that we would use a video in this way, he was already creating a story that we ended up developing into it. I had the fun part. I just had watching what Jake put together and giving my opinions here and there. It's been a delight, this project.
Hey, I think I had the fun part too.
But
Yeah.
I have to say that we were unscripted pretty much.
Yeah.
And Jake, with his questions and the way he would phrase them and the feedback that he would give, it was difficult for me to just talk to the camera. I said, Jake, you have to like be in the shot so I can see you. And with that face and that big smile, he would let you know if you were like on the right track and give you very good eye contact and very good feedback, which I'm not sure all directors do. But that really was great. That really helped me a lot, because we were kind of winging it, right, and ad-libbing as we went. So I hope you enjoy the film.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and when it started out, we obviously knew that he had made great dresses, that Eugene Alexander had a lot of success in the New York City fashion industry and here in Sarasota with their shop. But once we started doing the interviews, it became pretty clear pretty quickly that the intrigue here is Eugene's life and his relationship with Alex. And as I started to hear him talk about that, that's what I wanted to hear more of, and that's what I think ended up making the film really what it is.
What was the most rewarding part of making this film for you, Jake?
The most rewarding part, after, I don't know, over 1,000 people, a couple thousand people have seen the film now, the most rewarding part is still seeing Eugene's reaction to it. Because if I make a film about somebody and manipulate what they're saying, manipulate the story, and other people like it, but he feels upset by it, then I don't feel like I did him justice. But going to a couple film festivals, especially sitting in Sunscreen Film Festival in St. Pete, Florida, with Deborah and Eugene. Finally, the project was over. I just got to sit back and enjoy it, and had a great time watching the film.
Eugene, do you continue to create today, or tell us a little about what you're doing now?
Well, I do. I have to work. I have a workshop, and I am building pipe organ facades for mostly churches, for digital organs, and I'm also, right now, I'm building gargoyles. From my time in New York City, I got to really just appreciate the great Art Deco architectural details that are all over the city when you look up. It's incredible. And I think the most iconic is are the 8 gargoyles that are on the Chrysler Building on the 77th floor. So I've recreated that. And working with Jake again and Deborah on promoting.
I loved the film. I got goosebumps watching it. It's your story. And one of the parts I like so much is when you tell the story about Alex getting the jacket into the store. Would you share a little of that story about the jacket?
All right.
We ended up eventually getting an agent, which was for us the way to go. An agent in New York represents several designers, and they can have a much better showroom than you could afford on your own as a small designer. We were in the 498 building, and as the numbers get bigger going up 7th Avenue, the buildings are more couture, abuse that word, but in the 500 building, the rents are a lot more, and there you would find, in those days, Bill Blass, Oscar de la Renta, Mary McFadden. But 498 was also a very up-and-coming, good building. But before that, Alex was just trying to get into the stores to see these buyers, and he couldn't. So he got a brown shirt and brown pants, so he would look like a UPS driver. And the jacket was in a box that looked like a UPS box, you know. And they just let him in. He just said delivery, and they just let him right in. And he was in the buying office, and he knew what this woman at Bloomingdale's looked like, because her picture was in Women's Wear Daily all the time. So he just opened the box and got out the jacket and showed it to her. She really liked it. And they ended up later buying it through the agent, but then she said, you need an agent, you can't just walk in, barge in on. But if I could just backtrack a little to something Jake said. After the film was shown in Orlando at the festival, this lady, she was a little bit younger than me, came up to me, and she said, the story that was told about me being a little gay boy and my mother allowed me to learn how to sew and things like that. She said it just reminded her of her son. She had tears coming down her eyes, and then so did I. And she was telling me how great it was to see a fashion designer who was openly gay, and that it gave her hope for her son, because she said she worries about his safety and things like that. Of course, that's a big concern now, but that just made me feel so good. Right.
Touched them in another way, too, in addition to your work. This film will move you. Be sure to watch Eugene Alexander, The Fashion of Eugene Stutzman at DutchCrafters.com/video. That's all the time we have for today. We'd like to extend a very special thank you to Eugene, to Deborah, to Jake. Thank you to all of you who joined us on Facebook today. Make sure you check out the film. I'm Beth Rice for Dutch Crafters. Have a great afternoon.